Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. Today we are doing a normal gossip tier list video. I have mentioned normal gossip on my channel before. It is one of my favorite podcasts, probably my #1 favorite podcast. So just to give a little recap for anyone who's not familiar with the podcast, Normal Gossip is a podcast that takes user-submitted stories, anonymizes them, and then tells them from a host to a guest in almost like a choose-your-own-adventure fashion. So the host will be telling the story, and then throughout the story, she'll kind of pause and ask the guest, like, what would you do in this situation? What do you think this person should do? How are you feeling? It's really great because it takes gossip stories from people you will never know and never meet and turns them into just fun, juicy, hilarious things that we can listen to and enjoy without being involved in any of the drama. I had this idea recently and I looked on YouTube and it seems like nobody else has made a video like this, at least at the time that I looked. And now that Normal Gossip has finished their 4th season and they're on their season break while they do their summer tour, I thought it would be fun to make a tier list of every Normal Gossip episode. Obviously, this is just my opinion, the ones that I enjoyed the most and the least. If you're a fan of Normal Gossip, I'm very interested to hear if you agree or disagree with these takes, so please leave a comment below about how you think I did, if you think that I placed something wrong. This podcast has 4 seasons and close to 40 episodes, so we have a lot to get through, and without further ado, let's just get into it. So the very first episode of the podcast is called Gossip Tonin. This one is about a grad student love triangle where a girl kind of joins this friend group, and the big drama is that she ends up overhearing some sexy time in the woods. Oh, hold on. I should have told you the categories. I'm so sorry. The first category is Bird Lamp. This is the best episodes. Episodes that are so good, you would carry them with you through a backpacking trip of Southeast Asia. Even if it was really impractical, you would still bring them with you because they're so good and you love them so much. The second tier is Fancy Wool. These are episodes that are really good quality. Really good quality. They're not quite as good as Bird Lamp, but really good, solid quality episodes. The mid-tier category is Flat Like Margaret. These ones are like nicely in the middle, just chilling, hanging out in the middle. The fourth category is Squeezed Peach. These ones are like a little busted, a little damaged. They got something a little bit wrong. They're not the best. They're not the worst, but they're not the best. And then the final category is Drowning at Water Aerobics, which might give you a hint about which episode was my least favorite episode. So obviously those are all like little references to things that come up throughout the podcast. But back to the first episode, Gossip Tonin, the grad student love triangle drama. I'm gonna put this in Flat Like Margaret. This was the first episode of the podcast. It was the first one that I heard. It's a solid episode. It's not my favorite, but like it's okay. It's a good start. It's what made me enjoy the podcast. So that's gonna go right in the middle. The second episode is called Dickmatized, and this is about a woman who works for a mattress company, and then she kind of finds out that her boyfriend has been lying to her, not being honest about himself, his family, his wealth, all of that kind of thing. I'm also gonna put this one in Flat Like Margaret. It was okay. I don't have a lot of strong memories about this one, but it was fine. So that's gonna go right there. The next episode is called Can I Say Something Bitchy? And this is the Knitting Club episode. Obviously this has to go in the Fancy Wool category because that's where that reference comes from. This was a pretty funny episode. It's like very low stakes drama, completely low stakes, but really great, which is what this podcast is great for. So that's gonna go with Fancy Wool. Number 4, always Google your neighbors. This one is about this girl who's trying to have a birthday party for her boyfriend, and she's like writing little notes around to her neighbors to ask them if it's okay or like let them know that she's gonna be having a party. She's trying to be polite. And it leads into this big drama with her neighbor who is weird and has a bunch of packages delivered outside her house. This was also a pretty good episode. I'm gonna put this one in Fancy Wool. Next up, Leave 'em a little bit broke, a little bit mad. This episode is going straight to the top tier. This episode is so funny. I think mostly what makes this episode great is the guest. She's really funny and has really good commentary. So this episode is about these like sorority girls who have this thing in their sorority where they have a handkerchief, and every time one of them gets married, you get to embroider your initials on the handkerchief. So there ends up being 2 girls left who are not married yet, and there's like a bunch of drama between them when they do start dating and getting engaged and whatnot, because they were the last ones. So this is like bridezilla drama, and it's very, very, very funny. This is usually the first one I recommend people listen to if they like want to start out with this podcast. This is a great entry episode, so that's going in the top tier. Next up is an episode called Nemesis by Proxy. It's about this woman who's dating a guy who like has no social media, and he's estranged from his family, and it turns out he's keeping a bunch of secrets from her. I don't have strong memories of this episode, so I'm gonna put it in Squeezed Peach because it's probably fine. I just don't really remember a lot about it. It's definitely not in the top level, so I'm gonna put it in the bottom half. Next up is an episode called No One Tells Josh Gondelman the Good Gossip. Josh Gondelman was the guest for this episode. This one is about a neighbor who is a pathological liar and is telling everyone that she ran this big race when the narrator of the story, or like the person that the gossip came from, thinks that she's lying, and the rest of the story is about like exposing that she's lying. This is a pretty good episode. I recall it being pretty funny, so I'm gonna put this here. I will say too, you guys will notice throughout this that like some of these I remember better than others. Like obviously the newer season I remember a lot more details because I just listened to it recently. Some of these I have gone back and re-listened to them for the sake of this video, but not all of them I have a super clear memory of. I think that does speak though to how good they were, because if I don't remember it, maybe it wasn't that good. I don't know. But we're getting close to the end of season 1. So let's see. We have one left, which is Spot the Scammer. This is another one of my favorite episodes. It's about 4 girls who are going to go on a girls trip for the summer, and they end up inviting this 5th person to make it like a little more affordable. Sorry, this is going right in bird lamp territory. This is the story with the bird lamp. It's like about a girls trip gone wrong, basically. It's really funny. It has a really, really good twist at the end. I won't say what it is, but this is an excellent episode. This is another one I feel like you can start out with if you've never listened to this podcast before. So that takes us through season 1. I'm not going to include the bonus episodes in season 1. I will include the bonus episodes in season 2 because they are good, and that's my executive decision to do so. But moving on to season 2, we start with Grandma's Best Friend, Dot. This is an episode about a girl who gets invited on a family vacation with someone else's family, and she ends up kind of getting involved in this drama about a stolen necklace, and people think that she stole it, and Grandma's best friend Dot ends up coming in clutch to save the day. This is a pretty great episode. I'm gonna put it in the secondary tier. I liked this one a lot. Number 2, The Not Quite Magicians. This is an episode about a girl who wants to be a stand-up comedian, I believe, but she ends up getting her career sidetracked by being part of this like magicians group that performs at children's birthday parties. This is one of my favorite episodes. I think it is very funny. I just think like the situation that she's in is like very funny and strange. So I'm putting that in the top tier. It's one of my favorites. Next up is an episode called Squirrel Enthusiast. I'm putting this one in the middle. It's okay. A lot of people like this episode. The memorable character from this episode is named Play-Doh Jason. The story is about like a children's soccer team. That's kind of the setup, but it's really about like the parents whose kids are in the soccer team having drama and like neighborhood problems between themselves. I think this one is good, but like it doesn't really stand out to me for any particular reason. Ultimately, the drama is pretty low stakes. It does have quite a twist at the end, but all in all, I'm putting it right here in the middle. Next up is an episode called Short King of East Texas. All I remember about this episode is that there's orchid drama. I think like the dad in this episode is an expert about orchids, where he like grows a lot of orchids. I don't remember a lot of details about this one, so sadly I'm putting it in Squeezed Peach. Next up, Personality of a Tan Wall. This episode is about people who work at Starbucks, and there's like some drama and problems. I think the story is told from the point of view of this girl who works at the Starbucks, and then there's drama going on between the manager and another employee. It's kind of like they have a love-hate relationship, like maybe they're getting down in the back room, maybe she hates him, it's kind of unclear. But this is a pretty solid episode. It's not one of my favorites, but it's pretty funny, so I'm gonna put this one in Flat Like Margaret, I think. Yep, okay. I'm not doing a great job on the spacing of these. They're not quite spaced exactly right, but whatever. Next is an episode called Podcast Famous. This one is about a girl who like inadvertently inserts herself into a podcast that she's a fan of by writing fan fiction about marrying one of the hosts. I know that this episode kind of got Normal Gossip in trouble, or at least it's like alleged that people figured out who this story was about. They try to anonymize all the stories, but supposedly somebody figured out who this episode was about and like released that, and so that did not go very well. This episode I didn't love. It was not really for me, like it's not my kind of drama, so I'm gonna put it in Squeezed Peach. You'll notice there are currently no episodes in Drowning at Water Aerobics, so none of them have been like truly bad at this point. There's only like definitely one, maybe more than one, that are like truly bad, which is a good sign. This is a very, very solid podcast overall. Next, Dishing in the Confessional. I have so little memory of this episode. It's about a girl who's being too supportive of her like shitty Hitchcock boyfriend. So I'm gonna put this in Squeezed Peach because I don't remember it. I don't think it was like bad enough where I would put it in Drowning at Water Aerobics. I just don't remember what it's about, but yeah, Squeezed Peach. The next one, Conflict Archaeology, is kind of the same story for me. I don't have like strong memories of what this is about. Like I don't remember it being that funny. It's about a girl moving across the country to be with her boyfriend after like 2 dates. So we're putting that also in Squeezed Peach. Next is Telephone Game. This is one of my #1 favorite episodes. This is also a really good introductory episode for people who are not familiar with this podcast. This one breaks from their normal format where normally it's like the host, Kelsey McKinney, telling the story to a guest. But in this version, it's different. Like they had each guest from the season record their own version of the same gossip story over and over. And it just like shows how gossip devolves based on how many people it's been through. And then finally at the end, after it's been through like 10 people, they allow the host, Kelsey, to hear the story, and this is such a great episode. I love it. It really demonstrates kind of what this podcast is about, which is gossip. Like it shows the life cycle of a piece of gossip. So I love this episode. I think it's great. It's in my top tier. Next up is another bonus episode called Your Niche Gossip. This one I'm putting in the second tier. The only reason I'm not putting it in first tier is because there's 5 stories in this episode. It's like 5 short stories, and 2 of them are so good. The one about the gay men's choir, and then the other one about the poop bag. They're the first and the last stories told in this episode. They are so funny. They are so good. The other 3 stories in this I don't really care for, and the quality of the recordings are kind of bad, so it's like hard to listen to them. So I'm putting this one in the second tier simply because of those 2 stories that I do really love. Okay, now we're getting into season 3 and we have Righteous Lesbian Energy. This is a story about like a guy and a girl who are best friends since childhood, and they end up like moving back to the same town. The guy has a girlfriend. He's trying to convince her to move in with him, and she finds this like cute house that she really wants. This one I think was like kind of complicated, which I like that when the stories are like kind of complicated and have a lot going on. So I'm putting this in the middle. It's not one of my favorites, but it's not bad by any means. Next up is The Adventures of Flat Margaret. This is an iconic episode. They've made a lot of like merch and stuff about Flat Margaret. This episode is just like simply funny. It's about a bunch of girls going to a One Direction concert. So that's going in the second tier. Next up is Loud Cats and Thin Walls. I honestly didn't really like this episode. It's gonna go in Squeezed Peach. It wasn't like terrible, but I didn't really like it. It's pretty much about a couple that moves into this apartment, and it has thin walls, and the neighbors next door like argue constantly, and their cats are really loud and annoying. But there was not really that good of a drama in this one. It was basically just like, I can overhear my neighbors fighting. So that's going in Squeezed Peach. Next up, Christmas is Canceled. This episode is about this drama about like a pots and pans set from Costco. And it also involves like children on either side of the family. You know how like on two sides of the family, you have to call your two sets of grandparents two different things? It's kind of about like drama in the family based on like who gets to be called what name as a grandparent. This one was solid. I'm gonna put it right in the middle. It wasn't like a wow episode, but it's pretty good. Next, You Can't Fight with Eris Tongue. This episode is about the lesbian kickball team. To be honest with you, I cannot remember a lot of the details of what happens in this episode. I just remember thinking it was hilarious and really enjoying it. My best friend is on a lesbian kickball team, so it was relatable to me for that reason, and I loved it, so I'm putting it in the second tier. Next up, we have In Defense of Children. This is the hot dog in the toilet episode. I think this episode is funny, but it's not like quite up there for me, so I'm putting it in the middle. A lot of people really like this episode, and I like it too, but I'm just gonna put it right in the middle because it's not like one of my most favorite. Kind of same story with the next one, which is The Science Behind Gossip. This one is a murder mystery, like escape room episode, so that's going right in the middle as well. I remember liking this episode. I used to date a guy who worked for an escape room, so it also felt relatable to me in certain ways, but it's gonna go in the middle. The next one is Steampunk Ass Murder Mystery. I just re-listened to this one recently. This is a great episode. It's about the girl who inherits a pocket watch from her grandfather and really wants the watch to work, so she gets into this online community in like the early days of the internet, and she meets a guy who supposedly can fix the watch, and a lot of drama goes down from there. There's a really good twist in this episode. This is one of my favorites, so I'm putting it in Fancy Wool. We're running out of space in Fancy Wool and Flat Lake Margaret, so we'll see what we end up with. We have one season left, so let's get into season 4, the most recent season. The first episode in that season is called Every Peach is a Miracle. This episode is like okay. I don't love it that much. I'm gonna put it in Squeezed Peach, which funny is where that title comes from. It's about farmers market drama. This is the first episode where I started noticing something that other people have pointed out a lot about the podcast, which is that in the anonymization process, it seems like sometimes the creators of this podcast will try to add in queer couples as much as possible, or like non-binary characters and whatnot, or like making a couple lesbians when they're not lesbians in the original, which is fine. Like, I think if you're anonymizing and whatever, like, that's fine to include more representation of LGBTQ people. However, sometimes I feel like they overdo it and it causes structural problems to the story. Like, for example, in this episode, there's a character who's non-binary, and I feel like the way that the story is told, to me, it seems like this person was probably a man in the original story, but they made them non-binary to be like woke, and it kind of like messes with the integrity of the story. So I don't really like that. I think that's crept into the podcast a lot in the newer season, where they've like taken a lot of liberties with how they're changing the stories, and I don't like that, so I'm putting this one in Squeezed Peach. Next is The Only Single Girl at Disney. This is a solid episode. This is like kind of a classic, like very low stakes actual situation, but the storytelling makes it really fun. So I'm gonna put this in the middle. Next up, I Love All Corgis. This is a great episode. This is definitely one of my favorites. I'm gonna put it in the top tier. I thought the guest in this episode was really funny. The drama is really funny. It's about a neighborhood dog group where one of the members is presumably lying about some of the dogs she has owned over the years. I think this was a really good episode out of season 4. Season 4 for me was not the most successful season, but this episode was really good. Next is an episode called Is Mythology Just Gossip? This one is about the girl who works as a librarian. She has a degree in library science. Honestly, I found this episode boring. It just didn't catch me. I didn't think it was that interesting, so I'm putting it in Squeezed Peach. I did not love this one. Next, Processing Our Michael Phelps Trauma. You are going straight to the bottom tier. This is the worst episode they have ever made. It was awful. Nothing happens. It's incredibly boring. There's no drama. There's no stakes. It's not even like low stakes, funny storytelling. It's like there's nothing in this episode. Nothing happens. The guest seems like they don't want to be there. Like, easily the worst episode they've ever made. I almost fell asleep listening to it. It is truly terrible. Next is Vigilante Renovation. I loved this episode. I'm gonna put this in my top tier. I thought this one was really funny. There's a lot of like good stakes in this episode. It's very relatable. It's about a guy who starts suspecting that his next door neighbor, who is his friend, might actually be his landlord. It's a really great episode. I love it. It has some twists and turns, so I'm putting that in my top. After that is the Chair Saga, and I think this one is another example of them possibly changing some characters to be a different sexuality just for the sake of doing that, and it doesn't really work with the story. So this story is about staying at like their rich family member's house, and it's a lesbian couple in the story, so they're both women, and one of the women sits down on this chair while she's in a wet bathing suit, and she leaves a mark on the chair that looks like her vaginal area, and it's like a stamp. And so they have this big drama about like how to fix the chair or how to, you know, cover it up so that nobody knows when the people come back from vacation. I think most likely it seems to me that in the original, this is probably a man whose dick outline is what was on the chair, because to me that makes so much more sense than like your vagina being stamped on the chair. Like I feel like it was probably a dick, but to be woke, they wanted to make it a lesbian couple, so I don't like that, and for that it's gonna get downgraded. This would be one of my favorite episodes, but I'm gonna put it in the middle because I think that they're editing the stories too much. Next up is Murder Binders and Unthinkable Burgers. I didn't like this episode. It's about this girl who's like too obsessed with true crime, and she uses that to spy on her neighbors, and like the drama is really not drama. I think the way that they told the story was strange. Like there's a lot of details that don't add up, and I don't know if the story just didn't add up or if they added and removed things that kind of like created these inconsistencies. So I also did not really like this episode. It's going in the bottom. Next is Till Deb Do Us Part. I thought this episode was actually pretty decent. The drama is not very high stakes. It's about a chill bride. Most of the drama revolves around the sister-in-law, who I guess is also the maid of honor, stealing a hair straightener from the stepmother-in-law who nobody likes. So I'm gonna put this one, I ran out of space in my middle tier, but I'm gonna put this in the middle tier because that's where I think it really belongs. I'll make it like a little smaller and I'll put it here in the middle because it was funny, it wasn't bad, but it like wasn't the most exciting episode. And finally we end with Family Mealworms. This is about this older woman who joins kind of like a commune. It's like a hippie community where they like have their own little society, and the central drama is about one of the guys in the commune getting these mealworms to use as like a protein source, but then the mealworms get sick and they're all dying and they're doing really bad and they smell bad, so they have to get rid of the mealworms, and there's like a big ethical debate about whether they should like burn them with fire, they should freeze them, like how should they kill them in the most ethical sort of way. So I thought this one was kind of funny just because it's so absurd, so I'm putting that one in the fancy wool category. Okay, so that is all the episodes. Now that we have placed everything, let's review. So based on the colors, red is season 1. Season 1 is like pretty evenly distributed, I would say. There's like some really great episodes, a lot of pretty good episodes, and then a couple that are like not my favorites. Season 2 is the same. There's more in like the lower tier, but there's also a solid amount in the upper tiers. Season 3 is like solidly in the middle, and then season 4 has a lot of variation. I think season 4 overall was probably my least favorite season, to be honest. My worst episode is in that season, but also some really good episodes are in that season. So these are my normal gossip opinions and hot takes. Like I said in the beginning, I would love to know how you would place these episodes. Tell me like your number 1 most favorite episode, and then also your worst least favorite episode in the comments down below. If you guys like this video, consider subscribing to my channel or giving the video a thumbs up. It really does help me out. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!